One lesson on justice got him fired. One student's phone made the whole system kneel. This story didn't begin with a gunshot. There was no dramatic police chase. It began in a classroom, a place we're taught to believe is safe, neutral, and filled with ideals. But as the saying goes, ideals are the first to shatter when they collide with reality. It was a normal Thursday morning at Hawthorne Preparatory Academy, one of the most prestigious high schools in Georgia. Civics teacher Mr. Darius Freeman walked into class like he always did, carrying an old laptop, a worn leather notebook, and a belief that his students could and should be told the truth. What he didn't know was that less than 48 hours later, his name would be plastered across headlines from Atlanta to Washington, D.C. He didn't know that the very lesson he gave about civil rights and systemic inequality would lead to him being accused of inciting division by a powerful white parent. And he certainly didn't know that a 3-minute video clip secretly recorded by a quiet black student in the back row would be the only thing standing between him and professional oblivion. And what he absolutely could not predict was this: that an entire system built on privilege and polite silence would tremble just because one man dared to tell the truth in the right place at the wrong time. Hawthorne Preparatory Academy, or simply Hawthorne Prep, sits tucked behind towering oak trees in the northern suburbs of Atlanta. Its iron gates curve beneath a gleaming Latin inscription: Disciplinum per veritatem, discipline through truth. An inspiring motto. But at Hawthorne, truth often takes a back seat to reputation, money, and skin color. With 80 years of tradition, Hawthorne has shaped state politicians, Southern tech CEOs, and enough lawyers to fill the firm directories in Buckhead. 95% of the student body is white. The rest are carefully selected minorities, just enough to check a diversity box. In the faculty lounge, the conversations lean towards spring golf retreats, wine festivals in Napa, or winter getaways to Aspen. George Floyd? Redlining? The right to protest? Those are sensitive topics. Teachers of color like Mr. Freeman are both respected and held at arm's length like jazz music at a classical concert. Appreciated, but best kept quiet. Darius Freeman wasn't born for this kind of environment, at least not on paper. He grew up in West End, a historically black neighborhood in Atlanta, known for both its economic struggles and its cultural pride. Raised by a night shift nurse and a grandfather who once got arrested during a 1,965 voting rights protest, Freeman understood the price of having a voice. After graduating from Howard University, one of the nation's most prestigious HBCUs, Freeman began his career as a freelance journalist. He wrote for the Atlanta Tribune, interviewed families of police violence victims, and was once escorted out of a press room for asking the wrong person the right question. But when his daughter Amara was born, he took a different path: education. He wanted to plant hope where it mattered most, and to him, that place was a civics classroom. As a teacher, Freeman stood out. He didn't dodge controversial topics. He taught the Constitution, legislative systems, and the legal loopholes that too often cost people like him their lives. He spoke plainly, no sugarcoating. And that made some people uncomfortable, especially those who believed equality was solved once we had touchscreen voting machines. That Thursday, at exactly 10:15 a.m., Mr. Freeman began his class with a simple slide. There are two legal systems in America, one for those born believing they'll be heard, and one for everyone else. He didn't raise his voice. He wasn't riling anyone up. He quoted the Constitution, cited the Civil Rights Act of 1964. He showed video clips: Martin Luther King Jr., George Floyd, the name Breonna Taylor, and a news report about a black student being handcuffed for skipping class. Then he said, being a citizen isn't just a legal status. It's a promise. And for too many people, that promise is revoked before they even understand what it means. The class was silent, except for one student seated in the front row, arms crossed, glancing at his friends with a smirk. His name, Mason Whitmore. And he was recording. Just a short clip. It started right after Mr. Freeman said, "If you're born white, From that moment on, the lesson wasn't just a lecture. It became a charge. The name Caroline Whitmore was anything but unfamiliar at Hawthorne Prep. A former federal prosecutor and the wife of a sitting state senator, Caroline didn't just enter a room, she commanded it. Golden hair, crimson lips sharp like a warning, and a smile that could slice through granite. She never raised her voice, never slammed a table. But one glance from her could delay a board meeting, change a teacher's syllabus, or make a six-figure donation evaporate like it never existed. Her son, Mason Whitmore, was Hawthorne's golden boy, smart, athletic, near-perfect GPA. But underneath the accolades lay something colder, an undercurrent of entitlement, the kind often found in boys raised to believe they were born to lead. That day in class, just as Mr. Freeman displayed the infamous image of George Floyd pinned under a knee, Mason raised his hand. "I have a question," he said, with the polished tone of a student trained for debate club. "I don't think we should be learning this. This is political propaganda, not education." The room froze. Mr. Freeman didn't flinch. He nodded and walked toward Mason's desk. "Thank you for your question, Mason. But what makes you believe that historical facts are propaganda?" Mason smirked. "Not everyone believes what you're saying is true. People have different opinions." Mr. Freeman, still calm, replied, "There are many opinions, but only one truth. If what I'm saying makes you uncomfortable, it's not because it's false, it's because the truth is touching something deeper inside you." No one laughed. No one clapped. The air was tight as a drawn string. Mason said nothing more. But he didn't lose. He looked down at his phone and hit record. After class, the audio clip was trimmed, keeping only this part. "If you're born white, you have an advantage that black people don't. Delayed suspicion." On its own, it sounded inflammatory. No one heard the sentences before it. No one heard the reasoning after. Just a cold, isolated soundbite, stripped of tone, stripped of truth. Mason texted the audio to his mother with a short message. "You should hear this. It's exactly what he always does." Within 30 minutes, Caroline Whitmore was on the phone, not asking, commanding a meeting with the headmaster, Raymond Barker. "Raymond, we need to speak. Urgently," Caroline said over the phone. She didn't wait for the headmaster to ask why. "This teacher, Freeman, what he said today was unacceptable. He told white students they have privilege. He's pushing guilt and division. This is political extremism dressed up as education." Mr. Barker tried to stay composed. He reminded her it was a civics class, and that the day's lesson involved civil rights and constitutional issues. But Caroline cut him off. "Would you like the Whitmore Scholarship Fund pulled? Would you like this recording forwarded to the local press?" Silence. Only the soft exhale of a headmaster at one of the state's most respected institutions, sounding as fragile as the last leaf of autumn. The next morning at 10 a.m., Mr. Freeman received an internal email. "Urgent meeting requested with headmaster. Please report to the office." When he arrived, Headmaster Barker was already seated along with 2 board members. No one smiled. The headmaster spoke quickly, almost mechanically. "Darius, we've received a formal complaint from a parent regarding your lesson yesterday. Pending investigation, we're placing you on paid administrative leave for 2 weeks. Freeman's voice was tight. "I have the right to respond. At the very least, I should be allowed to explain that audio in full context." "We're not discussing content," one board member interrupted. "It's standard protocol, just an administrative pause." Mr. Freeman stood up. He didn't argue. But as he walked out, it wasn't just a job he felt slipping through his fingers. It was the last shred of respect for a place once called a sanctuary for knowledge. Less than 6 hours later, an anonymous post appeared on the Hawthorne parent blog. The headline, bold and blunt: "Teacher under investigation for divisive language at elite school." By the next day, Fox Atlanta picked it up. On Twitter, far-right accounts amplified the fire. "Woke teacher pushing racial guilt in our schools." Mr. Freeman became a shadow target. No face, no name, Just another black teacher who talked too much. Mr. Freeman's small apartment sat tucked away on a quiet street in Decatur. That night, the air was bitter cold. Frost clung to the windows, and the warm glow of a yellow desk lamp bathed the surface where he flipped through old documents. A folder on his laptop was labeled Old Wounds. He clicked it open. What appeared were stories that had never made it to print. An investigative piece about the suspicious death of Jamal Brooks in the Macon County Jail back in 2007. An op-ed titled The Unequal Silence, rejected by 3 editorial boards for being too biased, and a commentary he had submitted to CNN in 2013 after the Trayvon Martin case that was returned with the note, "We need a more balanced perspective." He could never forget the image of Jamal's mother, an aging woman clutching her son's blood-stained sneakers, pressing them into his hands. "They'll say it's made up, but this is the proof. You're the journalist, don't let them bury this." He wrote. He submitted. Then came the calls, the silent removals, the cut-off emails. Eventually he understood. If you speak what they're not ready to hear, no matter how truthful, you'll always be the one at fault. That was when he left journalism and turned to education. But he carried the scar of a man who once lost his voice at the moment it mattered most. The wooden cabinet beside his desk still held a few childhood keepsakes. He opened it and pulled out an old knit cap, frayed at the edges and faded. It had belonged to his grandfather, the one he wore during the Selma marches in 1965. He remembered being 10 years old, sitting at the foot of the bed as his grandfather spoke in the dark. "When they dragged me away, the people on the sidewalk didn't say a word. They looked down, silent. I didn't blame them. But it was that silence that hurt more than the cuffs." Freeman had asked, "Weren't you scared?" His grandfather answered, "I wasn't scared of them covering my mouth. I was scared of the day I'd forget how to open it." At 3 a.m., Freeman stepped away from his desk. The soft kitchen light spilled out onto the balcony, where his daughter, Amara, sat curled up with a book. He poured her a cup of tea. "Still up?" Amara closed her book. "I've been thinking about you." "Me? Aren't you tired, Dad? Fighting all the time? Still getting suspended just for telling the truth?" Freeman said nothing for a moment. Then, "I don't fight to win, baby. I fight because if I don't, I'm not myself anymore." Amara sighed. At college, most professors avoid talking about race. They don't want low-course ratings. They teach the topsoil of history, afraid to dig deeper. Freeman looked at her face, a reflection of youth, strength, and unresolved pain. "You don't have to apologize for who you are. But if you stay silent just to keep others comfortable, you're turning away from your own voice." Slowly, she replied, "I signed up for a summer teaching internship at Clark Atlanta. I want to learn to teach like you, no dodging." He smiled gently, reached into his shirt pocket, and pulled out an old, worn ID card, his 1999 Howard University library card. "I've kept this all these years as a reminder. Knowledge is a weapon, and truth is the only bullet that doesn't need to explode to shake the world." They clinked teacups. In the cold, whispering wind of a Georgia winter night, a legacy passed from hand to hand, through blood, through silence, through memory. The next day, Freeman visited the local library down the street. He sat at the same wooden table he used to frequent, pulled out a copy of The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, the spine cracked, pages yellowed. He scribbled something in the margin. "My daughter is about to start teaching. If she speaks the truth, she'll be criticized. But if she stays silent, she'll disappear." In that civics classroom, no one said a word, but Jamila Hayes took action. A quiet, sharp-minded black junior, Jamila was one of the few faces of color in that cold stone fortress of a school. She rarely spoke up, but she saw everything. And she understood what was happening, that Mr. Freeman wasn't being targeted because he taught wrong. He was being targeted because he dared to teach at all. When Mason raised his hand to interrupt and deliberately began recording a snippet, Jamila quietly opened her camera app and hit record, hiding her phone beneath the desk and angling it toward the podium. The video ran nearly 13 minutes, capturing Mr. Freeman's entire segment, including the moment Mason tried to cut him off. 3 days later, as rumors swirled about Mr. Freeman's suspension for no clear reason, Jamila stayed up all night. She knew she held something important, a truth that needed to be seen. And before dawn, as the sky still clung to darkness, she posted the full video on TikTok. The caption was brief but heavy. "He was just telling the truth. This is what they tried to hide." No music. No effects. Just the truth, uncut, unfiltered, undeniable. Within 4 hours, the video had 100,000 views. By the 12th hour, it passed 600,000. And by the 48th, it had skyrocketed to over 2.3 million. Comments flooded in. I cried, hearing him speak. "This isn't hate, it's courage. I was warned for teaching slavery with too much emotion. I stand with him. This is exactly why we need teachers like Mr. Freeman." Across the U.S., teachers duetted the video, sharing their own censored lessons. Students from other elite schools began speaking out. The spark had ignited a wildfire, and no one could put it out. The next morning, Hawthorne Prep woke up to a social media storm. Hashtags like #Justice for Mr. Freeman, #Let Teachers Teach, and #Truth in Classroom were everywhere: Twitter, Instagram, Reddit. A teacher from Texas wrote, "I had to remove a Rosa Parks slide because it wasn't neutral enough. Mr. Freeman is speaking for all of us." An alum from Hawthorne shared, "Graduated 2009. No one ever taught me the truth like he did. I wish I had him." On YouTube, legal analysts broke down Freeman's lesson, citing the U.S. Constitution and civil rights history. A few law professors confirmed the lesson was not only appropriate, it was exemplary. On the 5th day after the video went viral, the Georgia Department of Education issued a press release demanding that Hawthorne Prep suspend all disciplinary actions related to Mr. Freeman and launch an independent review. A memorandum was sent to Hawthorne's school board. The state superintendent's words were clear. No teacher should be punished for helping students understand the role of law and justice in society. CNN ran the headline, "Teacher Suspended Over Justice Lesson Student Fights Back with Truth." MSNBC, The Guardian, and even Good Morning America invited Jamila for interviews. On air, calm and humble, she said, "He was the first teacher who made me feel I didn't have to apologize for my skin color." Audiences across the country embraced her. She became known as the voice of the silent classroom. The mounting pressure forced Hawthorne's Board of Trustees to do something unheard of in its 80-year history: a public hearing. The auditorium was packed. Students, parents, faculty, reporters. News cameras were rolling. Mr. Freeman walked to the podium in a plain white shirt, no tie. His face was calm, but his eyes held the fire of a man whose silence had already burned long enough. "I taught my students that the law is not a tool of power. It's a promise of justice. But in that same classroom, I became a target for speaking an inconvenient truth." He paused, locking eyes with the board members. Education without truth is just a whitewashed lie, and when we punish teachers for telling the truth, we don't just fail our classrooms, we fail our future. Silence followed. Then, applause rising, loud, unstoppable. When Caroline Whitmore took the stand, she arrived poised, calculated, and cold. She offered no apology. Instead, she said, "I was protecting my son from extremism in education." But one board member, the only black alumnus ever to serve on Hawthorne's board, spoke up. "You weren't protecting your son. You were protecting privilege. And you used your power to bury the truth." Mason was invited to speak. He declined. He sat, head down, avoiding Jamila's gaze, the same Jamila who now stood as the voice of a classroom that refused to stay silent. Over 400 teachers across the state signed a petition demanding that Mr. Freeman's name and reputation be restored. Former Hawthorne teachers, some who'd been forced out for criticizing student tracking based on ability, finally spoke up. "We can't teach freedom while being forced into silence." Outside the school, hundreds of students gathered holding signs. Teach us the truth. Truth is not hate speech. One group wore T-shirts printed with Mr. Freeman's face and the words, "My teacher, my hero." 3 weeks after the public hearing, the Hawthorne School Board released an official statement. "We sincerely apologize to Mr. Darius Freeman for the hasty, unfair, and improper handling of his case, a process that did not reflect the educational values this school stands for. We commit to reforming our evaluation protocols and administrative training to prevent similar failures in the future." At the press conference, Principal Raymond Barker, eyes sunken from sleepless nights, read the apology aloud. But Mr. Freeman's seat was empty. He had declined to return to Hawthorne Prep. In a quiet post on LinkedIn, he wrote, "I don't need a title to teach. I just need hearts willing to hear the truth." 1 week later, Clark Atlanta University, one of the oldest HBCUs in the nation, announced that Mr. Freeman would join their faculty, teaching critical thinking and social justice starting next semester. In the photo attached to the announcement, he stood in front of the university library, holding The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. His expression, not triumphant, but at peace, like a man who had finally set down a burden that was never his to carry. Jamila Hayes was invited to speak at the National Student Education Summit, attended by representatives from over 30 states, including hundreds of principals, teachers, and policymakers. On stage, wearing a simple navy dress, Jamila told the entire story. No dramatics. No outrage. Just the truth as seen through eyes once afraid, now unflinching. "I didn't record the video to be a hero. I just didn't want another teacher's voice taken away. We don't need perfect teachers. We need teachers who refuse to be silent." Her speech was later cited in the U.S. Department of Education's white paper on teaching freedom and student rights to dissent. Media outlets called her the symbol of hope for Generation Z. Meanwhile, Caroline Whitmore, facing pressure from both parents and investigative reporters, quietly stepped down from the school's donor board. Her law firm faced a wave of corporate boycotts. Each morning, a truck parked in front of her office, displaying a banner that read, "You can't buy back integrity." And Mason, once the school's pride, found himself isolated. Old social media posts resurfaced. Past remarks mocking black student scholarships turned into ammunition against him. He applied to transfer. Sources revealed that at least 3 schools rejected him due to public backlash. Finally, Mason posted a single sentence online. "I thought I was right. Turns out, I never really understood." No one replied. 3 months after the suspension, Mr. Freeman stepped back into a classroom. But this time, it wasn't high school. It was Clark Atlanta University, a lecture hall filled with students of every background, color, and conviction. Behind him, projected on the wall, was the title of his first lecture, Critical Thinking in Divided Times. The room was silent. Students leaned forward. They weren't waiting for a show. They were waiting for truth, and they knew they were in the right place. Mr. Freeman began with a soft smile, then asked, "How many of you have ever been told, 'Don't say that it's too divisive'? How many of you have ever wondered if your voice matters?" Dozens of hands rose. Then today, know this. Silence is not neutrality. It is complicity. A week later, Mr. Freeman published an op-ed in the Washington Post, titled, "We Can't Teach America Without Talking About Race." In it, he wrote, "I'm not against white students. I'm against keeping any student from knowing the truth. You can't build good citizens out of children protected by lies. If the truth makes you uncomfortable, remember that lies have kept millions silent. And those silences, stacked over generations, are the foundation of injustice." The article was shared over 1 million times. Teachers printed it and taped it to their classroom walls. A high school teacher in Detroit wrote the final line on his chalkboard, "Don't let silence be your legacy." In one final image, Mr. Freeman stands before his new class. Behind him, the wall reads, "Welcome to Critical Thinking 101. To his side, a blackboard, a desk, and a stack of books, James Baldwin, Angela Davis, Ta-Nehisi Coates. In the warm afternoon light, he gazes at his students, black, white, Latinx, Asian, all listening. No one looking away. No one silenced. If the truth makes you uncomfortable, then know this. Lies have kept generations silent. Don't let silence be your legacy.